if you had to train AI to do something, you have the only way to do it is to create an organized, structured library, knowledge library. But it's really the same thing for when you're passing this along anyway, right? To a person who's going to implement and take over. So having to go through and create, this is our SOP. Not just the step by step, but it's also about this is the philosophy. This is how Mark Stock thinks about your business. This is how you see your unique value proposition. This is your personal brand. Especially, I'm hearing if customers are having a hard time, transferring out of you. So let me just kick off with introducing a little bit more about who Mark Fansler is. Mark is a construction and real estate CEO with nearly 30 years experience building and operating asset-heavy businesses. And as a principal owner of the M. Vincent family of companies, he leads real estate development, construction management, property operations, and national steel structure distribution across multiple states, as well as a broker team of commercial and residential, real estate agents. So Mark has worked at every level of the construction business, from pre-construction and estimating to large-scale mixed-use development and turnaround leadership, where margins, people, and decisions really matter. So if you want to learn more about Mark Fansler, his website is mvincentassets.com. And the next person I want to introduce more is Daryl. Daryl Luter is the president of Fulcrum Associates with over 15 years experience leading construction operations from the field to executive seat. Now, having worked his way from superintendent to president, Daryl understands where growing construction companies break and how to build leadership and accountability without everything running back through the owner. So Daryl brings a practical operator level perspective shaped by real schedules, real crews, and real consequences, not just theory, making his insights immediately relevant to construction CEOs navigating growth. And then I also wanted to share a real quick intro for those of you who don't know who I am watching the replay. So I'm Yun Cannon, and I work with CEOs into construction trades as well as service businesses who built real revenue and really now need systems that scale without owner dependence. So as a fractional CMO and CSO and a revenue systems advisor, what I do is I work mainly with $1 to $25 million companies to solve problems that growth exposes. So things like leadership bottlenecks, founder bottlenecks, inconsistent leads, weak leverage, revenue that might look strong on paper but feels really fragile in practice. So those are the types of organizations I work with. So my background actually is having launched and scaled and sold 3 other businesses. So I do bring sort of a in the trenches, background to being able to reflect my perspective and thoughts on that. So yeah, let me kickstart with some panel questions talking about, I'm sorry, I want to let Mark Stock. Can you introduce yourself, who you
Sure
are,
thing.
your company,
Yes.
and how long you've been in, how long you've had your company? Tell us a little bit about what you do and what you'd like to be able to tackle as far as the topic of today.
Yeah. Well, tell me when to stop if I bore you.
Not
But
at all.
May of 1986 is when I started the business. My wife and I were at the time we were considered just welding and fabricating of all metal products. I ran the company with my wife for about 7 years until I hired my first employee. So we're 33 years with employees, one of which, and I'll get into it a little deeper later, has been with me 24 years this August, and several more that have a lot of longevity with me. Um, the business escalated when I hired my first bookkeeper and project manager, which was they were hired within a month of one another. And that was the time when we got into more directly into building construction. Um, I describe our business now as welding and fabricating as it relates mostly to building construction, but we do many other types of welding and fabricating. We have trucks that go out and just do hourly service and for other construction companies and so on and so forth. So I started my business. I'm 66 years old, just turned, and
Happy birthday if you just turned.
thank you. Well, it was Groundhog's Day, but close enough. It's the same month. Um, Several years ago, started our business succession planning, which was probably a late decade later than it should have been. But we had some changes in 2015 when my son came on board, and about 5 years into it, expressed an interest in owning and eventually running the business. So he's obviously a very key player. Um, our current business succession plan has me handing off my leadership role March 1st.
Oh,
And quite frankly, I'm um, shouldn't be, but I'm nervous and skeptical. And those are things that I normally haven't been in business. Um, I do a lot of what I do by the feel that I've gained for the economy at the time, for the workers that I have in place that are skilled workers, and how much I rely on them and my customers. You know, we have a very strong customer base, but we're currently 16 and soon to be 17 employees um, who I tend to have my business driven by the skill set that I have, which may or may not make sense. But one of my biggest problems, even though we've done our analysis on the business and we know where we make money, is a lot of the jobs still come to me through my cell phone, and they're not always small jobs. Sometimes they're very big contractual jobs that I get a lead on 6 or 8 months before one of my competitors. And so I don't I don't know exactly how to hand that off to someone that I have in place now, but we're working on trying to figure that out. Um, so the leadership role as it is now, if the pyramid has me at the top currently, May 1st, my triangle goes down next to my office manager now, who will become general manager, and my son, who will become production manager. And then I'll be hopefully a dotted line around me being down next to them, where they tap me for my technical expertise would be one of the things that will be on my new job agenda, because I'm not leaving totally. Business development and sales will be where I fly. So that's a really crude overview. I could go on, but
well,
um,
that's really helpful. I appreciate you sharing the context of what your past, your present, and what you're trying to go towards, to the future. So if you had to articulate your most immediate pressing challenge to solve for, how can we support you today in just discussing that?
that's a good question. Um, as I move over next to Katie and Tyler in the pyramid with a flat top now, if you will, um, I want to be sure that they've got a finger on the pulse, and on the pulse of the economy, on the pulse of workload. You know, we have software, we can project our workload pretty good, but I want to make sure the two of them are able to basically to do what I do. You know, we've gone through this a few times, but I still have. It's not that I don't have faith in them, but I don't have. I've said it many times, and it frustrates them. They don't know everything that I do.
Yeah,
And
it's like a knowledge transfer that
even though I've tried to articulate it on paper so that this is what I do now and this is what has to be done, it seems like there's still missing links. And um, I'll leave it at that. I will say that I do know Daryl. I don't know Daryl super well, but I know him through a trade association, Associated Builders and Contractors. And not sure what year we were working for Fulcrum, but I was working more or less under his dad and a PM on a job. And
Small world.
when I knew the transition was happening, there I was impressed from my point of view how clean it was. And Daryl, I could be way off. I don't know, but um,
It definitely had some bumps, Mark, for sure.
yeah. And I've had those chats with other folks and they say the same thing, but I'm not leaving 100%. I'm still going to be around, but sales and business development is where I want to work. And the technical part of it, I answer questions every other hour, every day, and they're so easy for me to answer. It's the only natural part of the business that I clearly understand. And I want to make all the people that are underneath me. I will have two project managers and an operations manager above and beyond my son and Katie, who will all be looking to me for technical advice. And I don't ever want them to feel that they can't reach out to me, even if I'm halfway down Baja on my dirt bike or whatever the case is. I want them reaching out to me so that they're not losing, what do we do now? We don't often get in those cases, but I want to be available for them.
Right. I think this is such a common, actually, situation, and I'm so glad that you were able to, just share all the details around your context. So I want to get, Mark and Daryl, your thoughts and any questions you want to ask Mark Stock to be able to help him be able to tease through working through this challenge of basically how do you clone yourself, right? How do you transfer the skills, knowledge that you have onto these two other folks in your organization so you can, I think in three contexts, when I work with organizations, it's the same challenge, but it might just be for different reasons, whether it's they need to transfer because they're selling or they need to transfer because you just want to move on to other things. And so whatever the reason is, you still have this core challenge. So Mark, Daryl, left it, whoever wants to go first on sharing what's worked for you, what hasn't worked, or questions you just want to ask Mark Stock to clarify anything else.
Yeah, Daryl, why don't you kick it off? Considering you guys have a little bit of related history in the past.
Sure.
First, Mark, I just want to say, it says a lot for somebody that started a business in the mid '80s to still be around. So congratulations on that. That's not an easy feat to accomplish. So that does not go unnoticed. And I had plenty to share here, but I'll let Daryl sort of jump in, considering your companies have had some history together, and I'll come in behind it if that's okay.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Mark. And Mark, great to see you. It is amazing having gone through a very similar transition myself. About 10 years ago, we started the succession planning talks. Jeff realized it was time for him to find an exit strategy that was going to work for him. And what we really identified as a team between him and myself was that the company had changed. It had become a different organization than what it was. And the biggest issue that we identified internally was Jeff was doing everything. Jeff was in charge of the estimating. Jeff was in charge of all the project managers. Jeff was going to all the owners' meetings. Jeff was BD. Jeff was, finance. He was that tip of the pyramid that you talk about, and it was very difficult for him to confidently find some path to to exit out of the organization, and he still hasn't done that. He's still around in a chairman level capacity, and I'm forever grateful for that, because I will never be able to forget half the information that man knows in my entire lifetime. It's a blessing to have him here, to help us with this whole transition, which, we've definitely had our struggles with, because you have to look internally as an organization and how you're structured. It's not just about making it work the same way that it worked for you for all those years, in the same way for the future of the organization. We identified that there was a big shift on the on people in our industry, and it became very, very people centric. Obviously, things like the customer experience and business development, and all the tools that you put in place, a lot of those things didn't really change very much, but the people component became a very important factor in how we could find success in what we were doing. And that really started with, me sitting in the position I am now as president, understanding that I am not going to know everything. I will not know everything. And in fact, if I pretend that I know everything, I'm immediately in the wrong sitting around the table. But to find the people who do know the things that I don't know. In your case, you have so much institutional knowledge and so much expertise. I think it's about understanding how you unload that intellectual knowledge on your team, and let them know exactly where you're coming from and why. Because if the expectations are unclear between you and the people that you are putting in these positions to run the business, then it's going to be a real struggle. And I think that's something we did very clearly with our leadership team, was to outline expectations for every single person on the leadership team for the entire organization. And that was a huge part in making sure that, we were all set up for success, because all of those expectations had multi-department crossover. Our operations team was relying on our business development team. Our business development team was relying on our people, which was our HR department, and so on and so forth. So it really meant outlining what we wanted our people to do, why we wanted them to do it, and what it meant if it didn't go that way, where other people weren't able to do their job. So the communication component is huge, because it's not just talking to your leadership team and the people that are taking over the organization. It's talking to the entire company and letting them know exactly what and why you're doing what you're doing, to be able to support that new layer of leadership that you're putting in there, and give them the backing of the organization, the people that are out there, putting the tools to the steel and making this stuff happen, and let them know that, hey, yes, our leader who has been here for 35 plus years, who knows how to do everything, is that tip of the pyramid is going away, and we aren't sure if the next layer has got this. Support that layer. I mean, be the person that advocates for those people that you're putting in those roles, because obviously, you feel deep down inside that there is a level of trust there, and that trust will build and build and build based on experience, and that boils down to clear expectations and communication, because they're going to know what you need from them.
Sure. Yeah, appreciate that. So, in response to that, our handoff is to the entire company, including my wife, who, still is on. She's still on as VP, although she just collects the checks, really.
Very important role.
She's been very active in the business early on, and she still is there. So my point is that everybody's going to get the same handoff at the same time. So first week in March, and one of the reasons, one most important reason, is we have a new project manager coming on. We talked to her about this in her interview, and we want everybody to be on board. So we're waiting until her start date is 3/2. So that's why we said, okay, first week in March is when we do the handoff. So welcome aboard. By the way, I'm leaving. She knows that. We've already forewarned her, but yes. So thank you. We do understand, and I understand the clear expectations part of it as well.
Mark,
Hopefully,
can I answer Mark Fansler, do you have some thoughts or clarifying questions from Mark Stock?
I do. You know, a lot of what Daryl said, I couldn't agree with more. You know, the open communication across the company, not just the leaders, but across the company, is probably the most important part of this. Otherwise, the people beneath them, it doesn't matter how well you communicate with your leaders that are going to take over for you.
Correct. Yeah.
People are used to hearing communication come directly from you, right? So that's part of it. The other part of it is they may not communicate it the same way that you did to them because they have a different communication style, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, it doesn't matter. We've all been in this situation, and I imagine the people that are around you, because you guys sort of talk on the same frequency, so to speak.
Yep.
But there are, you know, we all take these tests, the litmus test, where you're in different blocks. You're either an A personality, a B personality, a supportive, or a dominant, whatever. But the thing that they never go into detail is that inside of each of those are three style of communicators. So part of the initial parts of your conversation was I've had conversations with them. One seems to get it, the others I'm not sure do yet. Could be because of the way they receive information compared to the way you send it,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And it sounds very simple, but nobody really educates us how to do this. Just like in school, they don't really teach you finance when we went to school, which should change. But there are visual communicators, auditory communicators, and kinesthetic communicators. Visual is obvious. They want to see how you're doing it. Show me on paper, show me pictures, show me this, you know, whatever. That's their, I call them the show me people, the visual communicators. They learn best by seeing it done, right?
Yep.
Auditory people, they are generally accountants, engineers, or whatever, because they need all of the details. And if you ask them a question, they will give you so many details, they will bludgeon you to death with them, right? And if you're an auditory person and you're speaking to a visual or a kinesthetic person like that, their eyes will glaze over and you will lose them.
Yeah.
So it could just be the difference between changing a few words in different conversations so that they will get it the way the other person did.
Yeah. Understood.
Yeah, and there's a of all of the courses and trainings that I've taken in my life, there's one that was the most impactful one. And it could be a good suggestion for you and your team leaders so that you learn how to communicate at your optimal capacity for the transition. It's a company called Rapport Leadership International. They have a power communications course that will just change everything about the way you guys communicate. You don't have to do that, but it's worth a look.
Yeah.
So I too come from a background that sort of left me sort of the guy that sort of had all of the knowledge in my head. I started as a carpenter, ended up a senior vice president for companies that were doing hundreds of millions of dollars a year, switched over to the business side, the business, you know, the non-operational side for pre-con, business development, marketing, branding, contract negotiations. 18 months later, I was a vice president again, and then left it and went into real estate. And a year later, I was running continental efforts. So I've seen what you do from the ground up
Mm-hmm.
in every position. And one of the things that I struggle with, even in my company, and I'll tell you what I've done to overcome that, is I've been sort of the hub of the wheel. That instead of learning the information, they just come to me for it, right? And that's great, but it's sort of like catching a fish and feeding somebody versus teaching them to fish so they can feed themselves, right? What I do in my company, my collective companies, because I own 8 of them, is I go out and leave my companies regularly to the people that are left in charge to do what they're supposed to do, who have a mandate that when I'm not available, they step into new positions and fill those roles until I come back, right? And I do that to start. I'll disappear for a couple of days. I'll come back and see what broke in the processes and procedures. We find out where it started and fix it, right? And then I'll leave again, this time for a week, because I want to stress it harder than I did the first time. And we just keep doing that until nothing's breaking. And I do that across the board. And I have plenty of opportunity to do that because I do a bunch of national speaking. It takes me away to do this stuff, and I travel for some of my national jobs. So this kind of came by force because I needed to be other places, but I knew it needed to happen for these reasons. And one of the things that I think would be beneficial is historically when you sell a company or you transition a company or somebody buys a company from someone else, the person, the matriarch of the business, usually stays behind in the form of a consultant for a period of time. Because the new people that take over, they have their own ideas that will take the company to places that you might not have imagined, and that's okay. But there's going to be a lot of relationships that still have to transition, and a lot of those phone calls that you get, you personally are going to have to start. Hang on a second, let me get so and so on the phone. You get them started, introduce the relationship. They may already know each other, but you're going to sort of force a sort of a stronger bond between them, and then just back out of the conversation, like leave the call.
Yeah.
And let them handle it. And then you go have the conversation with the person on your side. How did the rest of the conversation go? You can even set that up on calls so they're recorded so you can listen to the call after the fact, randomly, just go pick a bunch of conversations, listen to them, and then go say, when you did this, you got this response. I've learned over the years, if you change that language to this, you'll get this response, right? And that way you won't have to be in on every conversation, and people will begin to appreciate the fact that while you're there, if needed, the go-to now is somebody else.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you keep your phone available to every person without making those introductions and backing away from the call, which tells them, I'm here, but that's your guy or that's your girl for now on.
Yeah.
If you don't do that, they will never transition away from you.
Yeah. Not to interrupt you, but I've been 8 months now trying to send my customers to someone else in my team.
Mm-hmm.
The customers don't necessarily like it until they're through it. And I tell them, Jeremy Herbert is going to be taking this project on. This is his responsibilities, and he'll be contacting you shortly. But if you have any issues with Jeremy or the way you're being treated, you can let me know. But I said, until then, I'm just going to be in the shadows. Some of them like it and some of them don't.
Yeah, that's just a relationship, right? They've had that happening with you for so long. They're just used to having a conversation with you, and that's their comfort level.
Yes.
They have to learn that they can trust somebody else that way too.
Yeah.
And that the only way they're going to get to this, and it's a product of what you're going through, but there are going to be some people you lose from a business perspective, right? You can't sweat those people. You want to keep as many as you can, but don't get hung up on I lost so and so, right? You might want to figure out why you lost them, but you don't sweat the individual loss. The follow up to that is if they refuse to do that, because I do this with my people. If a customer is calling me, my first question is well, what did Amanda say, or what did so and so say? Because that tells them you were supposed to have that conversation with them before you called me. Did you have that conversation?
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
You have to treat your customer in some ways like you treat your employees. You have to train them to do something different.
Right.
And it's going to take a moment to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. So the fact that you're still going to be around is nice, but you kind of have to take the position that time is of the essence, because what happens if I'm not here tomorrow? What happens if I'm not here 6 months from now?
Yeah.
I need you guys to be in lockstep with each other right now, not later, not a year from now, like right now. And not that you want to impose any sort of panic on anybody, but you have to. I'm 62. I have less time in front of me than I do behind me, right? So things can happen, and you don't want to leave your people in a lurch. You don't want to leave your clients in a lurch, and you want your company to be healthy in the event that something happens to you. And that can't happen if everybody is still exclusively reaching for you.
Sure.
Part of that's instinct and habit, and that takes time to change. That's normal.
Yeah.
Great thoughts there. Great insights that you just shared. Mark Vansler. Mark Stock, I actually have some questions for you to unpack a little bit more too. So that's one piece I'm hearing you share as far as cloning yourself and your knowledge. The piece about transferring customers over to someone else. What are some of the other big rocks that you're finding it challenging to do this knowledge transfer?
Um, a year ago, we did some research on the types of projects where our profit margins are higher. And, one of those particular line items is we do good on residential, high-end residential structural steel. We've done a lot of it and we do really well at it. And that's been a little bit of a stepping stone for me because that work's always come to us. And now I'm trying to reach out on my business development and go after it. So we've been talking about how we can market ourselves without using Mark as the marketer. I'm more than willing to do it for 3 or 4 years, but we're going to a market that I've never had to chase before, and now I'm chasing that type of work because it's a higher profit margin type of work for us.
So one of the things I would just want to add, to what all of the thoughts and ideas that Daryl and Mark Vansler had shared, because this is actually the very thing, I help organizations with time and time again. Like one of my clients, he wanted to sell his manufacturing company, and he ended up selling it to his son. But his son never worked in the company, and so it was massive amount of knowledge transfer. So we had systematically taken each of his, like, what do you do all day? Because a lot of it comes so intuitively to you. You don't, you take for granted, like, it's like riding a bike, not really thinking about how you approach things. And so we had this come up, like in the context of, in the context of marketing, let's say, right? That's one of your buckets, one of your big rocks. We literally had to create it's almost as if you had to create an entire knowledge library to train an AI, because that's what you have to do. If you had to train AI to do something, the only way to do it is to create an organized, structured library, knowledge library. But it's really the same thing for when you're passing this along anyway, right? To a person who's going to implement and take over. So having to go through and create, this is our SOP, not just the step-by-step, but it's also about, this is the philosophy. This is how Mark Stock thinks about your business. This is how you see your unique value proposition. This is your personal brand, especially I'm hearing if customers are having a hard time, transferring out of you. I have another client who has the same issue. They're trying to transfer their clients as the CEO and hire a whole team of salespeople, but they've been very driven, almost like a personality-driven brand, and we've had to extract that into being able to articulate what fuels your personal brand, and how can we have everyone else sort of be able to follow through on a similar personal brand. And it was things like, when it came to the customers, they were very warm. They treated their customers like family. Like when they saw their customers, they're giving each other hugs. Like they just know each other that well. They're sending Christmas gifts. Their customers send them Christmas gifts, even though it's usually the other way around. So we compare that to, all right, who was the person you hired to take over this? And that person was very clinical, very putting the role on of a salesperson, and you really didn't get a chance to get to know them as a person, and they were a little bit abrasive, so they were kind of lacking the warmth, of a genuine people person. So that we can identify immediately, that's getting the wrong person. That was the wrong person in the wrong seat, right? They had the wrong person on the bus, and definitely had the wrong person in the wrong seat. But if they chose somebody who now, that person can actually take over, they are a similar vibe of being warm and personable and all that, right? And now it's training them on, this is our philosophy. This is okay to do. This is the kind of language, like how do we build rapport first? And being able to document that. So we had it all written out. That's like on the customer side, but going back to like, you're trying to do marketing, it's documenting everything you're doing, right?
Sure.
In the moment. So if you're jumping on LinkedIn for outreach, it's screen share, recording everything. You have tools like Use Loom, Screenomatic, so recording everything and narrating it as you go, because the narrating part is so key for people to get into your head as to, what do you see when you're looking at an organization's website? What are you looking for? Why did you pass up on that as far as business development? Or why did you think that this was your dream 100 list? Why did you craft your email that way? What was the language? And capturing everything, so once it's captured on video, then there's other tools that can make it a lot easier to repurpose those videos into written documents and SOPs. But there's an SOP for everything. I have another organization who's in construction, and we're totally rebuilding their sales operating system so that everybody can do things, the same way, just like a franchise would. And it's turning into a 90-page document because it's that holistic, right? Not 90 pages as in we don't expect everybody to sit there and read the full thing, but it's got a section about how the CEO does everything, in the sales aspect. So it's really about, I think the big takeaway was trying to remember, trying to get it into your habit of how do I record this? And so we had to think ahead of time, plan it out, even if it's big Post-it stickers on your computer, to record this on Loom if you're going to do something on the computer. Have a voice memo app ready to go if you're just talking to people in person and they're asking a question and you go, wait, let me record this. And you talk into the recorder, just to be able to capture how things flow out of you. And then once we document how it flows out of you, then to systematize, putting it into an SOP, right? And then the SOP then goes into training. So now let's just take pieces of this SOP and let's do a training about it.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, that sounds like a large undertaking, but it's not as bad as it sounds, because we've had to do this 8 times now. So I couldn't agree with that what she just said anymore. It's one of the easiest ways, even when you're not available to tap.
Yeah.
For you to pass the information off from your mind and your years of experience to somebody who doesn't have that access to you anymore. It might not even be somebody that needs access to you, but they're far enough down in the food chain of your company that they still need to learn the knowledge that you have so they can put it to practical use at the level they are.
Right.
They're not necessarily making decisions for the company, but you make them better versions of themselves by doing just what you suggested.
Yeah.
One of the things that we have, and I don't know why I didn't think of this, is we have a video team that I just let know when I'm having certain things that I want to be recorded.
Yeah.
They will show up, record it. They do the audio, they do everything. I've done enough of it now. I don't even think about them being in the room. And it takes a minute to get used to that. But they take all that stuff and bust it up, and do just what you said. They turn it into an SOP, they turn it into training videos, and they do everything else. And then when somebody has an ask of you, they can go to the training stuff first, do a search, and you'll title the things, that'll be, in this episode or whatever, we talk about this, and this, and they can do a search for those keywords. It'll bring it up. They can listen to that video without ever having to bother you. And you just transferred knowledge without having to be in the room to do it. That resource, that tool that she's suggesting, is probably going to be one of the most powerful things that you can do, because it will outlive you,
Right.
literally, and it can be used to pass knowledge on for generations.
Yeah. It's not a tool that I would have thought of using, quite frankly. So it's
Yeah.
good information.
We come from the same generation. We don't think like that.
Right.
Unless we've got people around us turning
Right.
us on to what people are doing today.
Yeah.
You and I likely wouldn't have thought of that, and that's okay. That's why we got people around us that are better at those things than we are, right?
Yeah.
So,
And it's so, I also want to like mention, by the way, Mark Stock, that it's, don't be overwhelmed by, oh my gosh, I got to sit here and type out. When I said a 90-page document earlier, the CEO wasn't typing out a 90-page document.
Right.
We
You don't
were,
have to worry about me doing that.
we have some automations that can convert, all of the audio files and all of the video files and convert it into a system. But I do think that there's a question on our sheet that we originally had 10 questions as our Kickstarter questions, but one of them that relates to this, Daryl, I wanted to get some of your insights on too. The question was, what systems made leadership hires finally stick instead of reverting back to you? Because this is the constraint that we're also working on as far as Mark Stock's issue.
Yeah, no, I think talking about how you communicate as an organization is probably one of the most important things you can do, no matter what systems you put in place, making sure that you have clear, comprehensive, and consistent messaging and communication with all of your employees. Back to the expectations in saying to your leadership team, this is what I need from you. And for their ability to execute on that means you need to empower them. You need to give them the support. You need to tell them that they have certain authorities. They can make decisions without you being there. And that right there is, to other Mark's point, is the basically stress it until you break it and then find out why it broke and then fix that. Yeah. And you're definitely going to find, and I know the scale that you're at, Mark, is it might not be prepared for, a video stock of, systems and standard operating procedures and things like that. It may be more of looking at the people that you are putting in these positions and finding ways for them to succeed. What tools do they need to be able to do their jobs and do their jobs well? And the institutional knowledge that you have is something that you can deploy on a case-by-case basis. Allow them to make the decisions. I had a wonderful woman working for us, and she's still here. She started as an assistant project manager, and I will say, as a preface to this, the labor market being what it is, we've looked outside of traditional labor markets. We don't hire based on what school you went to, what degree you have, even what background you might have. Our last APM we hired was a New Hampshire State Trooper. So, we look for hiring in the soft skills and those qualities. Because those are the ones that now more than ever you have to lean into with your employees, because those are the skill sets that are going to retain those lifelong customers that you've worked so hard to build a relationship with. But she was working in a lumber yard, and she started out as an assistant project manager, and she would consistently get up from her desk, come into my office, ask me a question. Get up from her desk, come into my office, ask me a question. And every time I would just answer it. And it got to a point where I'm looking at this going, I only have a limited amount of bandwidth, but she keeps coming to me for all of these solutions. So started kind of deploying servant leadership and trying to figure out, well, what does she need? Well, she needs information. Am I able to give that to her? Yes. Well, what's better, me giving that to her and making it the path of least resistance for her, or empowering her by asking her, what would she do? What would the next best thing be? What would the decision you would want to make be? How would you handle this? And before not, it wasn't too long after that, she stopped getting up and coming to ask questions. It was more of a, hey, I'm going to be doing this, just a heads up. It's like, that's great, and completely support them and endorse them in the decisions that they've made. And now we've promoted her to a project manager, and she's an absolute rock star. And she's developed a level of trust with our leadership team where she's built, this autonomy that comes with her role that allows her to do her job. But at the same time, she still has a safety net in operations where if she has a question, she can ask. If she does fall down, she's going to be supported. I think the empowerment of your employees is really one of the bigger kind of ineffable systems that you can really instill, because that's what is going to be a straight conduit for you to instill that knowledge on those employees, because you're going to have a conversation with them. When something comes up, you're going to have a conversation. You're going to ask them the questions. They're going to come up with the answers. And before you know it, you've transferred that information effectively. They know exactly how Mark would do this because you've had that conversation. You guys have been through that mutual experience together. It takes time. It definitely takes time. But I will say, when Jeff and I were talking about how do we change up the communication and get our customers more in tune with reaching out to me opposed to him, we did exactly what you did. It was a slowly remove yourself from the conversation. Hey, go talk to so and so. But it was even more so, they would send an email to Jeff and CC me on it, and Jeff would say, I'm not going to respond to those emails to me. You have to respond to those emails.
Right.
I would like you to respond and respond with as ever you see fit. And so I started to do that. And before you know it, the attention shifts from Jeff to me. And then the more important part of that is you're going to find yourself removing yourself from those conversations and slowly removing yourself from the organization. And I think what happens is people try to stay relevant in their business because they've done it for so long, and that's who you are. And that's a very, very difficult thing to separate yourself from. But trust your team. You have to be able to trust the people that you have around you. And if there is a fracture in that trust, talk about it. Don't just let it fester. Don't just let it get bigger and bigger and bigger. Talk about it. Hey, I'm concerned about this. So your communication systems, your empowerment to your employees, identifying clear expectations and authorities, those are real tangible items that you can have conversations about and really measure your success against. Because if somebody's doing something and they're not doing it the way that you've always done it, we'll have the conversation with them. Hey, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Help kind of guide them in the direction that you would go, opposed to telling. So it is very beneficial to have standard operating procedures. I am not knocking that. I would kill to have a book this thick so I could go, hey, you know what? Take this. I'll be back in 6 months. You're going to do fine. But the reality of that, it's not equal for every organization.
Right.
So it's really look at your people and make sure they have the tools, and those tools aren't always just a physical, a computer, a cell phone, the latest and greatest welding tools, education. Those are all great, but those soft systems that you put in place, the empowerment of your people, the communication, and clear and concise understanding of authorities and expectations are everything, because that's what tells the people, hey, first off, you know exactly what I'm doing, you know what you expect from me, and when I'm not getting it or I'm not doing it, you're going to tell me. So it takes a lot of mystery out of the role.
Yeah, I'd add one thing to that. One of the things that I found over the years is that you get very good at doing things a certain way because that's what works for you, right? I've learned that if I just communicate what the outcome is desired, what the level of finish is supposed to be, what the level of quality is supposed to be, what I expect in the relationship with our clients, and then get out of the way of the critical thinking on how they make that accomplish, right?
Yep.
That's the piece that I've learned, that if I teach them that and foster their own abilities to make the decisions, like what Daryl was saying, and then you want them to run past you regularly what they're doing, so that if there's a teaching moment in it, you can get involved in the teaching moment instead of the everyday decisions.
Sure.
But if you can take some time to maybe focus on the outcomes of what all the decisions are to be, instead of, Christ, there's 2 million things I could teach these people, right? That's not as important as the outcome of those 2 million items, right? It doesn't matter if they're making an ornamental rail, or if they're doing a structural piece, or if they're doing this. The outcome is the same. The standard of finish, the tolerances that you expect, what the finish, whether it's powder coated, painted, or primed, and they're going to do something else to it later. All that stuff is important as it relates to what standard you hold for each of those things.
Yes. Yep.
And if you spend your time teaching them what the expectation is of the final product, and less time teaching them how to do each of the technical components of making it happen, you may find that some of your talent has ideas that you never thought of that makes it easier, faster, and cheaper.
Yeah.
And to just get out of their way with regard to, unless it's something very specific that I can't think of off the top of my head that has to be done a certain way, or else this goes wrong.
Right.
Finance.
Finance, right. So, in that regard, that's what I've learned to teach my people, because what it's taught them how to do is to think for themselves, much like what Daryl was saying. Ask them, what would you do in this scenario, right? And then say, that's a great idea. Go ahead and do that, right? After a while, they get to a point, like he was suggesting, that they just stop asking him because they've got the confidence to make their decisions on their own.
Yeah.
Just add the piece to the equation that is instilling in them the level of whatever you're expecting the final result to be. If it's finances, how you need the report to look when it's done.
Yeah.
How they do all that stuff in the middle of it, you don't care. You should be running your business through reports right now, not through all that other stuff.
Right.
And teach them how to get to the end, what you expect at the end. Don't teach them how to get from point A to point Z. To get there, they're going to have many ideas and a lot of talent around them to help keep them on track, because you got other people in the company that know already what you want.
Sure. Yeah.
They can lean on those people for those things, and then make some decisions without ever having to tap you for it.
Yeah.
I love that. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with just focusing everybody on what is the outcome goal and what does great look like.
Right.
So I love that. I have just one quick thought too. I'd love to share for you, Mark, before we wrap. And that would be, when we're talking about SOPs, one of the other systems that has worked really well for some of the organizations I work with. The CEO has, I'm always a big advocate if you're having trouble getting leadership to do, to do that critical level of thinking to the point where you can clone yourself, having those one-on-ones with the key people on a weekly basis. So in the one-on-ones, that's when they can collect all of their, during the week, all their questions that they had for you. And anytime they ask you a question, the mantra is always, well, what do you think you should do? Or what do you think you should say? And that they knew that they had to come to the table with that. These are my questions. How would you answer this? But I have to prepare. How would I answer it? And why would I answer it that way? But then it goes a step further. Each of your team members has access to the same, Google Drive, let's say. It's one of the easiest ones to work with. And they then are responsible to update the pieces at what they're extracting from you, what they're learning. So if you're saying, all right, how do you handle XYZ situation? And you're correcting them on, no, what I would recommend is do it this way. And that goes into, they're putting it into the SOP. So it's not like something that is on your to-do list.
Right.
And when they're all engaged with it, they're going to constantly look at it and review it and actually use it. And you could just jokingly call it the Mark Stock knowledge library. And that's the SOP. The SOP is getting it out of your head. So is everything that I know about this particular function, this department, this role, do I see it, being visible in an outline kind of a format table? Is it somewhere in the table of contents?
Right.
So that I know, especially then there is one situation too, by the way, I can think of and I love Mark Fansler's, your response of let it, whatever breaks, you come back and you fix it. I love that because it gives him a chance to kind of do this baptism by fire on,
Right.
Yeah, go be the leader. But there is one situation where I can think of a client has, like when they sell, what they do for construction is they build football fields and track and turf for universities. Anyway, so one project can be $1 million, $3 million project. So that CEO who's owned the company for 30 some years, he didn't want to have the project managers or the construction managers to just wing it and see what breaks. So I guess in that situation, we identify, well, what are the ones that what are the situations that's too much of a risk to come back to something's broken? And that would be then going into a training. What's the system? So what systems makes leadership hires finally stick instead of reverting back to you? One part of that system should be training. So in the beginning, it starts with documenting out of your schedule what you're doing, and then turning into an SOP, but then, like I said, turning that from the SOP into a training so that they can role play on paper or in person in your office rather than trying to make these decisions in front of the customer or
Yeah.
with the customer job site.
Yeah.
Or, whatever the situation
So
is. Anyway, just wanted to offer those further thoughts.
if I could build on that, I think what was helpful for us was, we looked hard at our entire company and every single individual and every single role in the organization. And we realized, we were only a company of 25 when I took over, and we're now approaching close to 40. We didn't have very clear roles and responsibilities. We didn't have job descriptions for every single role in the organization. And that was a little bit of a problem because it was trying to figure out, what are they responsible for? Where should they be applying these standard operating procedures? What are the non-negotiables? What are the thresholds of their authority? And so we took a pretty hard look at what every role's job description was. And that really helped take a lot of mystery off the table where somebody was thinking somebody else was handling it, or somebody didn't know, hey, I didn't realize, I was supposed to do that. It really, really helps. So if you don't have clean, comprehensive job descriptions for each and every role, including president, CEO, chairman, whatever the C-suite top level is in your organization, write those.
Yeah.
Make sure everybody has that.
Yeah, we actually are like 75% through that because we realized we started doing a little bit of forensics on ourselves. We're like, ouch.
Yeah.
We need to get up with the times here.
Yep.
And that's another big part of it. A lot of what we had, employee manuals and stuff like that, were made 25 years ago.
Us too.
And it's a lot different now. So the employee manual now reads very, very different than it did then.
Yes.
All right. Well, let's circle back a second. Mark, one of the things that you said that you were struggling with, let's get back to the marketing piece, was these custom metals for these high-end residential projects, right? So you can do what I'm going to suggest with any of the metals that you do, right? Or any of the construction you do. The earliest, and you may do this already, so forgive me if you're doing this already, one of the earliest signs that something's coming is at a municipal level. The first thing they have to do is they have to submit a plan saying, we are thinking about doing this, will you allow it? Right?
Yeah, sure.
So if you have one person in your company, an admin or somebody who's responsible for going down to the municipal, all the areas that you go, that you service, to go down to the municipal buildings and go to the planning section, because this is all public knowledge, and just go in and say, I want to see all the current projects that are running through approval right now. You can look at those projects and see, is your product in it or not? If it is, that's the time to start marketing to them. The second part of that comes from a lot of different ways. I'm an old school guy. I like to talk to people on the phone. I like to create the relationships because the inflection in your voice and the empathy you have for their situation, the stress that they're under, only comes through that way or in person, right? But you can't do that on scale, right? So some of the systems that we deploy to do this are systems that allow us to send them emails, texts, letters, cards, personal letters,
Sure.
flyers or whatever, is a company called Print Genie. Like I Dream of Genie,
Yeah.
Print Genie. It's owned by Andy Detweiler, who owns Go Big Printing. This is set up exclusively for contractors and real estate people, real investment people.
Yeah.
So the marketing is pretty simple. You can plug in the addresses. You can buy a list of architecture data that are in your area and general contractors that are in your area that use your product. Drop it into a CSV file, upload it into the system, map it. Mapping it is all the same data needs to be in the same column, like who the owner is, who the point of contact is, who their email is, what their phone number is, specifically their cell phones. And you need to, in the system, map, like when it says dear so and so, you need to map that spot to the right spot in the column.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we could say dear so and so, and instead of it's so and so, it says their phone number. So you have to match the columns up so the right data drops in. But you can have somebody learn how to do this inside of Print Genie in a very short period of time, and they can set up a campaign that'll last 4 or 5 months for you. We do it with a postcard and then an email and then a text. And then we pick up the phone and call them, and then they do the whole thing over again, and we do that 4 or 5 times.
Yeah.
Because some people auditory, they want to read, they don't want to hear your voice. Some people are visual, they want a card or a letter, right? Some people are kinesthetic, they want to hear your voice and catch the vibe between you, right?
Yeah.
So we call that mixed media. We hit them all, right?
Yep.
And you just tell them, hey, understand you're an architect or you're a custom builder or whatever. You set a campaign up for each. Or if you're going down to the municipality, maybe you have some owner information on the project. Hey, hey, Mr. Owner, we're miscellaneous metals people. I see you're getting ready to build a custom house. We can provide that particular item for you. Is there a chance we can talk with you about coming up with a design for you for that particular item, right?
Yeah.
And you can set that up, flip a switch, and forget about it for 5 months. And they will get contacted 25, 30 times without you thinking about it.
Yep.
And then it schedules it all out for you. Now, there's a little bit of a brain gymnastics you have to go through, because if you want to hit them every 2 weeks, the gymnastics is the letter gets mailed on this day. They don't get it on this day. It might take 4 or 5 days for them to get it. You have to account for that drag for the other things to hit on their 2-week intervals. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Understood.
So, the system's very affordable. There's no upfront cost. There's different levels of plans, and they range from like $49 a month to something higher. And then you only pay for your usage. And the usage, if you don't use it at all, you're just paying, if you're in the $49 a month plan, you just pay the $49 so that you have access to the pricing plan for however much you're sending.
Yeah.
So it's a very good program. It's a set it and forget it. And Andy and his team are fantastic. They will take your data, go through and look for the anomalies and fix it before they send it. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the person's name is Schwarzenegger. The name's that long, right?
Yep.
Other people's name are Smith. It's this long. Well, if you go to put it in a letter or a postcard, the postcard or the letter doesn't know it's running out of room. It just disappears off the page, right?
Yep.
They will go fix that before they send it, so that it wraps and everything is right. So you don't have any of those misprints that are showing up on the printed data that gets mailed out. And I do this for, we're pretty large, for my collective companies. We do this for 500,000 properties a month.
Yeah.
And that's, for my goal is because I want to acquire commercial real estate.
Yeah.
Right. That's what we do, commercial mixed use. But while I'm on the call, it leads to property management, property maintenance. It leads to construction. It leads to all these different other things. But when you can set it and forget it, it leaves you free to do the things that you should be doing, which are only the things that make you money. nothing else.
Yeah.
You know, anything that you're doing right now that if you were to make a list all day long, just take a couple seconds. I'm going to make a phone call to so and so. I'm going to do this. If you just write that down, at the end of the day, if you go look, put a dollar sign next to the items that made you money, everything else somebody else needs to be doing.
Right.
Yeah,
And
great stuff.
if you don't take the time to realize how much you're spending on things that are not making you money or saving you money, right?
Yeah.
It could be either. You know, maybe you're talking to a contractor about a different product type or a different supplier for, you know, and that can save you over the course of a year, it could save you $500,000. Well, then
Yeah.
maybe you want to be in on that conversation because you
Right.
could fine tune the conversations.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, from a system perspective, if you just do those two things and never stop them, and this is the mistake that most people make, they will do a system long enough that they will get a handful of jobs and then they'll turn the systems off and take care of the jobs.
Yeah.
You can't do that. The problem to have, if you're going to have a problem, is too much work.
Right.
Because the money that the work will generate will fix the rest of the problems.
Yep.
If you do not have your marketing dialed in so that it is giving you steady work in the high margin stuff that you want to do, then you're going to struggle across the board because you can't hire the people you want to hire because you're not generating the revenue you need to generate.
Right. Yeah.
So if you just do those two things for that one product type, that's the high end metal, structural, and ornamental metals on the custom homes. That's just one example.
Sure.
If you do that for the other product types that you do and send that out, you'll have no problem creating enough revenue, enough lead service. The next problem you'll have almost always is you're going to need to hire a closing team.
It's what's interesting. Hear more about companies who are having a lead problem, and one of my clients now, they have way too many leads. So now we're scrambling to hire enough sales reps, you know, to handle
Right.
it.
They're good
So in any
problems to have.
case, we absolutely. I'll tell
Having
you
a
what,
really
this
good
is
CRM.
that's right. Yeah.
Exactly.
We,
Yeah, and that's the other piece. Great point, Daryl.
Yeah, this is such a huge topic, and I want to honor our time because we are actually over, and to be able to wrap up. But this is such a big topic, cloning yourself as the owner and trying to be able to transition out of that. It's certainly not something that we can cover end to end in just an hour. But I think in this hour we did really we
A lot of valuable
extracted
information.
a good starting list, right?
Right.
Of tactics, strategies, ways to tackle this problem that I think not only yourself, Mark, but all the other folks who are watching the replay can then take those ideas and start to implement it, you know, into the business. So I just wanted to say this was a great discussion. I loved, you know, your being forthcoming, Mark Stock, and I just appreciated all the input that Daryl and Mark Fansler has shared. And I trust that this has been, you know, folks have had something that you can take away from the conversation.
Very helpful. Very helpful.
And so, yeah, so with that,
I wanted to ask, because Daryl passed over it. I want to make sure it got heard. Are you using a CRM now?
Oh, absolutely.
No,
are you talking about me or Mark?
Mark, sorry. I know you are.
No, we are not.
All right. So I'm glad Daryl brought this up. A CRM is a customer relationship management software.
Yep.
Right. And it's invaluable. You can't run a business at scale without having one of these things, because if you don't, I don't care how many sticky notes you plan around, how many things you put in your calendar, you're going to forget to follow up on people. It doesn't matter how good you are.
Yeah.
Especially when you scale beyond your own capacity to do it. You know, you can be great until you hit a ceiling, and then it's like a grenade motor. It just blows up and everything falls apart.
Yeah.
The CRMs are one of the most valuable tools you can have. And there's a bunch of them that you can use. Some of the best ones are ones like Go High Level. It will do everything you want it to do with regard to tracking, and whoever's putting the data in it, each of your people should have access, and you can identify their level of access to data that's in it. Meaning, Some people can only load data, they can't do anything else.
Right.
So
Okay.
you can decide who has what authority in it and who sees what in it. But once it's loaded, while you're loading it, you can tag it. It's miscellaneous metals, it's structural metals, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. And that will notify, once you set the system up right, it will notify the person below you that it's their job to follow up on that thing. And then it will automatically flag in big red letters, late, right? Telling you that somebody didn't do their job. And you, instead of picking up the phone and calling the person, now just call the person who was responsible for it and say, yo,
Yeah.
I'm
Right.
seeing 10 calls you haven't made. It's gone delinquent. This is business.
Yeah.
Are you taking this serious or not? Right. And then you can impose on the person the importance of following that thing. That CRM, I'm glad you brought it up, Daryl, it's your lifeline.
Yeah.
It in marketing is your lifeline. You
Yeah.
need to, at a minimum, have those two systems in place.
Yeah. That sounds like one of the first things I want to do, because we have a lot of that data, but it's controlled chaos.
Yeah. So if you have it in an Excel format or in a format that can be converted to Excel,
Yeah.
you can get it into Excel and then to a CSV file.
Yeah.
The CSV file can be loaded into any CRM.
Yeah.
And then you just go in and map it.
Yeah.
It's a very easy process.
Yeah.
But thank you for bringing that up, Daryl, because I didn't think to bring it up, and I don't care how good you are at your job. If you don't have a CRM, you're missing stuff.
Yeah.
Digital Rolodex.
That's right.
Yeah, and it's not just a digital Rolodex. It's a Rolodex. And have you ever seen the movies where the executives walking into these powerful meetings and they have this person next to them chapping in their ear? This is Senator so and so. His wife's name is this, and they have 3 kids, and their dog just died, and that's what the CRM is.
Okay. Yeah. I assume so.
It comes up on your screen and reminds you all what these people are, why they're important to the company, the size of the job, everything. So those two things, the marketing piece and the CRM to track the marketing, massively important. And if all the data you have now, if you can just get it into a format that can be converted to a CSV file, getting it into the system, it's just downloading the file. It's that easy.
And likewise, of course, I'm happy to give you a free audit and give you any recommendations of what tools will help solve your problems.
Okay. Yeah.
The best. All right. So with that, I absolutely need to wrap. I trust that this was a valuable session for you. And
Yeah, I appreciate it. I didn't expect to get quite the attention I did. So
lucky you.
You looked out, Mark. Look at that.
Day, Mark.
and it was a worthwhile hour.